Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Modern Witch Podcast. My name is Madison, and I'm so glad you tuned in for this Reiki episode. On today's episode, we are going to talk about my Reiki story, how I got into Reiki. We're going to talk about what is Reiki. I'm going to explain Reiki from a spiritual standpoint and from a scientific standpoint. My knowledge of it primarily began on the spiritual side, and then the more I learned about Reiki, the more that I learned that there's actually a scientific side to Reiki as well, and an entire science behind how and why Reiki works. We're also going to talk about how you become a Reiki master, which is the level of Reiki that I have been attuned to. And then we're going to talk about what a Reiki session looks like. I wrote down a bunch of my frequently asked questions and just questions people have had about Reiki in general. So I'm going to try to answer all those throughout all those different segments we're going to go through. So let's get into it. My Reiki story. Okay, so if you guys have listened to any other episodes before, you know that I had a lot of spiritual gifts as a child. And one thing that's really cool about having spiritual gifts as a child is you're just so innocent. You don't really understand really much besides love. So I remember as a kid that if somebody was feeling sick or was not doing well, that I could almost like put my hand on them and just like send the intention of like good, healing, loving energy. And they would always like later be like, oh yeah, I'm actually feeling a lot better. Just like weird things like that. So as a kid, before I knew that Reiki was a thing, I knew that there was this concept of being able to basically give people like loving and healing energy from like your body to theirs, but I didn't understand how it worked. I just knew that that was kind of one in many kind of different spiritual experiences that I had, probably compared to some of the other kids that I was growing up with. So whenever I first got into Akashic Records, probably about 3-4 years ago, I also went down the Reiki rabbit hole because I learned about Akashic Records as a dimension, as a field, and then Reiki as essentially a way that you can heal and reset physical and mental health. And so I personally have tried every Western medicine, mental health thing known to man. And so that was a big part of why I started doing Reiki is I started doing Reiki on myself whenever I would fly. I just used to be a very anxious flyer. And so I would just send myself Reiki healing energy. And I noticed that it brought down my anxiety a lot whenever I was traveling. So I noticed that anytime I stopped and like to intentionally send myself healing Reiki energy, fun fact about Reiki, you can do it on yourself and you can do it on others. And so I realized that every time I was sending myself this Reiki energy, it like calmed my nervous system and would like reset my mental health. So I learned that basically anytime I was really struggling with anxiety, different things like that I could use Reiki energy to kind of stop that. So flash forward to about a year ago, I was at a spiritual retreat in Costa Rica, and the day before I went, I had a huge cavity, and I didn't have time to get it filled before I left. So the entire time I was in Costa Rica, I was just every single day making an intention to like do a meditation and like just send myself healing energy and loving energy specifically to that one tooth. And this was before I had actually become like attuned to Reiki symbols. I just understood the concept. And so literally whenever I came back the day after, I had a dentist appointment to get that cavity filled. And I went to get it filled and they were like, oh yeah, you don't have a cavity. Like it's gone. Like the tooth is perfectly fine. And I was like, whoa, that is crazy. And that was the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to actually start the process of getting a Reiki certification and practicing on others and all these other things, because I just saw all these ways that it was just really, really working in my life. And so I went through the process of learning Reiki, becoming attuned. And so I'm going to explain to you guys a little bit about what Reiki is. One thing you'll notice is that my Christmas tree is behind me. I don't necessarily align with any particular religion. I was brought up in a Christian household. We still celebrate Christmas, but I don't necessarily align with any specific religion, and Reiki does not align with any specific religion either. And so that's something that's interesting, is a lot of people think that, oh, you can only do Reiki if you're associated with a certain religion. Reiki is not associated with any religion. There's actually a guy named Yusui, which is actually the sort of Reiki that I do. And basically, he was in this meditative state. This is like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. This is the guy that founded Reiki. He was in like this deep, like 21-day meditation prayer time. And during that time, he basically got a download of Reiki, how it works, and different symbols that you can use in Reiki to send different energy to people. So let's break that down a little bit. So Reiki, as I mentioned, is not associated with any sort of religion. It is basically a energy healing concept that somebody got during a download and has been taught for hundreds and hundreds of years since then as a way of doing healing from one person through another without having to go through the traditional kind of doctors and prescriptions, like all these other things. Obviously, Reiki is not for everything. Like if you break a bone, specifically, you're not supposed to do Reiki on it until after the bone has been like reset to be fixed. So Reiki is not like a touch and fix sort of thing. It's more of a kind of expedited healing technique, if that makes sense. Okay, so the spiritual explanation of Reiki is life force energy. So whenever I tap into a Reiki session, I get into a meditative state, and I'm essentially tapping into life force energy. Life force energy is the energy that goes through all of us, and essentially by tapping into life force energy, I can then go in, and my gifts are primarily visual. I'm clairvoyant. So I can go in and I can actually do a scan of the person's chakras. So we all have 7 chakras. We have our crown chakra that connects us to the divine. We have our third eye chakra that connects us to psychic abilities, intuition, spiritual gifts. We have our throat chakra that connects us to being able to speak our truth, agree without being rude or defensive, different things like that. We have our heart chakra that is associated with being able to give and receive love. We have our solar plexus, which is where a lot of your stress, anxieties, worries, that they can hang out in the solar plexus area. Then we have our sacral chakra, which is going to be our chakra where sensuality, pleasure, all of those sorts of things flow through. Then we have our root chakra, which is going to be like our root or our base or our grounding chakra. And that chakra is largely focused around stability. If we have a lot of change in our life, our root chakra can get a little out of balance. So whenever I first start a Reiki session, I am, connecting to the life force energy, and then I'm going through and I'm looking at each one of the chakras. So from there, I can see if a chakra is opened or closed. And then a lot of times I can get downloads from each person's chakras. So for example, I was doing a Reiki session the other day, and I got whenever I got to the solar plexus was like really, really open, like a little too open. And chakras can be opened, closed, really closed, all sorts of things. But this person in particular had a really open solar plexus because they were the giver. They were the person that was taking on all the responsibilities, all the duties of everybody, trying to make sure everybody was happy, everybody was taken care of. They were just the traditional giver. And in this, they had gotten really out of balance on what is their responsibility, what is others' responsibility, understanding that you're not responsible for other people or their healing or their decisions, just that whole gamut of things. So as we were going through, I kind of got this download that's why her solar plexus was so open. So then afterwards, I was like, hey, one thing that was interesting is your solar plexus was really open. I think because it felt like you were, kind of the giver. You're always giving to others. You're worrying about if everybody else is taken care of. And sometimes it's just a reminder to come back and take responsibility for yourself and not take responsibility for others, maybe in areas where you're enabling them rather than helping them, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what the process is like. And so from kind of a spiritual side as well, there are different signs and symbols that you get attuned to. So whenever I was learning how to do Reiki, I went and actually learned different signs and symbols to be able to send your heart chakra strength, to be able to send your throat chakra emotional stability. There is a symbol to actually cut and disconnect from that person's energy after you finish. So after you finish a session, you'll do that symbol to disconnect your energy from that person's to not take any of that with you when you leave, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the spiritual side. That's what it looks like. That's how it flows. But a lot of people are like, what about the scientific side? So physiologically, what is happening whenever you go through the process of Reiki is we are all made up of atoms, of particles, and all of these different atoms and particles, they're vibrating at different rates, different speeds. And so within that, there's some high vibration, which is going to be good energy. Then there's going to be some lower vibration, which is going to be associated with conflict, anger, resentment. And it's essentially kind of like how if you ever are having a conversation with somebody and then like the conversation goes sideways and you can almost like feel the energy shift. That's what Reiki is. It's the concept of literally tapping into that energy of these atoms that are actually vibrating at different speeds. And so physiologically, I am tapping into these different cells within their body and giving these cells this higher vibrational, healing, loving light energy. And Reiki allows life force energy to actually flow into your crown chakra, out of your hands, and into the other person. And it really impacts us on a cellular level because it allows our cells to essentially level up to a higher vibration, which increases mood, gets rid of pain, all of these things. That's why people say you can use Reiki for mental or physical health because it has so many benefits. Okay, so how do you become a Reiki master? So I did all of my attunements online, but basically I had to learn like the process of Reiki, the process of connecting and disconnecting from the life force energy. I had to get attuned to certain symbols. I had to practice on myself so many times. I had to practice on others so many times. Fun fact, I've done Reiki on animals. I've done Reiki on trees. Anything that's living can get Reiki energy. And actually, let me take that back. Anything can get Reiki energy because actually my Netflix wasn't working the other day and I sent it Reiki energy and it just started working again. So that's what's really cool about Reiki is you can literally incorporate it into your entire life. It's literally just a way of connecting to a positive vibration and then being able to send that positive vibration wherever you want it to go, that loving energy wherever you want it to go. And if you think this is a little woo-woo, scientifically they back it. A lot of hospitals actually offer Reiki now to cancer patients, to hospice patients. And so Reiki is becoming a lot more mainstream now, and a lot more people are starting to understand that like if Western medicine hasn't worked for you, there are concepts like energy healing and things like that you can actually do that allow you to heal on a cellular level rather than through prescriptions and things like that. So, so how I became a Reiki master. Basically, I had to do like probably 150 practice sessions on people, animals, plants, myself, and I had to go through and do specific ones for mental health, specific ones for physical health. I had to go in and do reports to show like what challenge the person had or that I had, and then what the outcome was after the session. Kind of like school. I actually got my master's degree online. I used to work in human resources, and I have a master's in human resources that I got completely online. And so this certification that I did was very similar to the process you would go through if you were just like in an online school. I do plan to start offering Reiki classes in person in 2025. So if that's something that you're interested in, just DM me. I'll let you know when the newest date is. I don't have it out right now, but I'm sure by the time you're seeing this video, I'll probably have a date locked in. Okay. So essentially becoming a Reiki master is doing all these practice sessions, getting attuned, understanding how Reiki works, and then basically you have somebody who's already a Reiki master that attunes you to the symbols that you learn through a Reiki attunement ceremony. And that is essentially them opening up the crown chakra and allowing the life force energy to connect from your crown to your hands and then kind of be able to flow out so you can practice on people. So yeah, that's a little bit about Reiki. That was just kind of my brain dump. I tried to kind of answer all these different questions I had. And the last two questions I had was, what does a session look like and how to book? So what a session looks like, I have a studio downtown in Greensboro where I have a Reiki bed set up. Everything is just cute and fun and very aesthetic. I always have Reiki music playing in the background. I actually pick Reiki music that is um, essentially going along with your chakras. So you can have Reiki music that is good for your throat chakra, Reiki music that's good for your root chakra. So normally I have something like that playing in the background, some sort of incense diffuser if you're into that. And then the session, normally I sit down with a person, tell them a little bit about Reiki, answer any questions. Then they lay down on the Reiki bed, which is just like a giant massage bed. Close your eyes, we do some deep breathing, you get into a meditative state. And then what I do is I go through the person and I clear all of their chakras. I open any that are closed, and then I send healing energy to each chakra depending on what it needs. So what that looks like is, first I go through and I scan each chakra and I kind of see what the deal is for each chakra. Some chakras are really clean and clear. Like today I did a session, and when I went over the person's crown chakra, it was very clear that this person has a very clear, open crown chakra, and that they're seeking relationship with the divine, with God, with higher power. And so those are just kind of some of the downloads you get as you're going through. So after I go through each chakra, all of the chakras that are closed, I'll go through and open. And what I do is I start at the crown chakra and I move healing white light energy in through the crown chakra into the third eye, and then essentially down the body until the entire body is just lit up with kind of light energy, Reiki energy. And then from there, I go in and I work on each chakra individually, and I send each chakra whatever healing energy it needs. Sometimes maybe their throat chakra is closed because they don't feel comfortable speaking their truth, because maybe they don't know how to communicate their truth. And so I'll send them strength and emotional stability into that chakra to open up that chakra, but also allow them to communicate in a way that's effective, because sometimes you can have an open chakra and it doesn't mean you're open throat, and it doesn't mean you're communicating effectively. Sometimes your throat chakra can be too open, and maybe you're just a little bit harsh, and maybe you don't think think before you speak, And so you kind of see all these different things through the person's energy, and then you're able to basically add in whatever energy or healing that they need for each chakra. So that's a little bit of an idea of what a session looks like. Once I've done all of that, then I'll disconnect from that person's energy, allow them some time to kind of come back into the body, and then we just debrief at the end, and I'll kind of tell them what I saw, what I took away, and then I will send them home with just a little bit more information on how to connect with Reiki energy in the future. So yeah, if you guys are interested in booking a session, I am going to actually link it below. I am right now offering a free intro session for anybody that comes in the month of December. It is a free 20-minute intro session, so you can get an idea of how Reiki works. I can answer any questions you have. And so that's a special that'll go on through the end of December 2024. So snag that. If you're watching this video later, I offer very affordable Reiki rates, so feel free to book a session. I'll drop everything below. And as always, happy healing.